The first time I saw him, I wanted to rip out his throat, but my wolf begged me not to. Selene's claws dug into the earth, blood and dirt caking beneath her fingernails as she fought the overwhelming urge to shift. Her wolf had never betrayed her like this, never pulled and clawed and howled inside her skull until she thought she might split apart at the seams. And yet, as the red moon cast its crimson light through the forest canopy, something ancient and primal awakened inside her. 5 seasons she'd managed to avoid pack territory. 5 seasons of C3. KMRful hunting, of silent footsteps and downwind approaches. Of surviving. Not just surviving, thriving in her solitude, answering to no one, bowing to no alpha. She'd built something resembling peace from the ashes of her murdered family. And then, in the span of a single heartbeat, it all shattered. Stop. The command rolled through the clearing like thunder, deep and unmistakably alpha. The word itself seemed to have physical weight, pressing against her skin, demanding obedience. Selene froze, not from submission, but from shock. No one had tracked her in years. No one had gotten close enough to speak, let alone command. Without thinking, she whirled around, fangs bared, ready to fight. The moment their eyes locked, something inside her shifted. Her wolf, usually restless but controlled, surged forward with such force that Selene stumbled backward, a gasp tearing from her throat. The alpha stood at the edge of the clearing, moonlight illuminating the sharp angles of his face, the broad set of his shoulders. His eyes, silver in the darkness, widened slightly, the only indication he felt it too. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice steady despite the tension crackling between them. He took a step forward, and Selene's heart slammed against her ribs in a primal fight-or-flight response. But her wolf wanted neither. Her wolf wanted to move closer. Truth be told, Selene had heard whispers of this, of bonds that formed in an instant, of wolves recognizing their other halves under the moon's watchful gaze. She dismissed it as pack propaganda, designed to keep unmated females in line with the promise of perfect union. She didn't know what scared her more, that it might be real, or that it was happening to her. "Back off," she growled, the words scraping her throat like gravel. Her fingers curled into fists, claws piercing her own palms. The pain helped center her, helped keep her human side in control. The alpha tilted his head, nostrils flaring as he scented the air between them. "You're trespassing on Moonfang territory." His voice was calmer now, almost curious. "A lone wolf. Rare these days." Selene's lips curled. "And getting rarer, thanks to your kind." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, that she'd speak to an alpha with such open contempt. But there was something else there too, something that made her wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin. Interest. As if pulled by a string, he took another step toward her. "I am Kael, Alpha of Moonfang Pack." His gaze never left hers, searching, probing. "And you are?" "Leaving." Selene backed away, keeping her eyes locked on his. Never show your back to a predator, the first rule of survival her father had taught her before his throat was torn out by pack wolves. Kael's expression darkened. "The border is due north. I'll escort you." "I don't need an escort," she snapped, the words coming out sharper than intended. Her wolf whined in protest, pushing against her consciousness, urging her to stay. To submit. To accept. Never. Without warning, Selene darted into the trees, her feet barely touching the forest floor as she ran. She'd escaped pack wolves before, she knew how to vanish, how to mask her scent, how to become one with the shadows. But this time was different. Because this time, part of her didn't want to escape. Come morning, she'd put 10 miles between herself and Moonfang territory. The abandoned human cabin she'd claimed as her den stood isolated in a valley too rocky for pack hunts. Here, curled on her pallet of furs, Selene should have felt safe. Instead, her skin burned. Her bones ached. Her wolf paced restlessly inside her, howling for what they'd left behind. "Shut up," she hissed, pressing her palms against her temples. "It's nothing. Just the red moon. It'll pass." Deep down, she knew the truth. The stories she dismissed as fairy tales whispered through her memory, stories of mates, of bonds that transcended choice, of wolves drawn together by forces older than pack law. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was just another cruel joke from a universe that had never shown her kindness. Before she could move, a howl pierced the dawn, distant but unmistakable. Alpha. Calling. Searching. For her. Her body moved on instinct, rushing to the cabin door, fingers curling around the wooden frame. The howl came again, closer now, and her wolf surged in response, clawing at her insides, demanding she answer. Selene bit down on her lip until she tasted blood, using the sharp pain to anchor herself to reality. She would not answer. She would not submit. She would not become another pack female, bound to an alpha's will, existing only to serve. No matter how hard her wolf fought. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the calling had stopped. Selene paced the small cabin, unable to settle, unable to sleep. The silence felt worse somehow, an absence more demanding than the howl. Her wolf had retreated into sullen, aching silence, making her feel hollow. That night, the dreams came. Dreams of silver eyes and strong hands. Dreams of belonging, of safety, of pack. Dreams that left her gasping awake, body slick with sweat, a name on her lips she refused to speak. 3 days passed in this half-existence, her human side fighting for independence while her wolf side mourned something it had barely touched before losing. 3 days of fever and restlessness, of anger and confusion. On the 4th day, they came. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled Selene from her fitful sleep. Multiple sets, at least 5 wolves, moving with the coordinated precision of pack hunters. She was on her feet in an instant, scenting the air, muscles coiled tight. Moonfang. As the silence stretched, Selene weighed her options. The cabin had only one entrance. The window was too small for a quick escape. Fighting 5 pack wolves would be suicide. Without warning, the door burst open. Sunlight flooded the dim interior, temporarily blinding her. When her vision cleared, she found herself facing 4 warriors, each bearing the distinctive crescent moon mark of Moonfang Pack. And behind them, Kael. He filled the doorway, somehow larger than she remembered, his presence commanding the space without effort. Their eyes met, and the bond pulsed between them, raw and demanding. After that, everything happened too fast. The warriors moved forward. Selene's wolf, sensing threat, broke through her carefully maintained control. The shift hit her like lightning, bones cracking, skin stretching, human consciousness retreating as her wolf took over. The air thickened with tension and fear, not just hers, but the warriors. They hadn't expected her to shift so quickly, so completely. One lunged forward. Her wolf, faster, more desperate, slashed out. Blood sprayed across the cabin wall. The scent of it, rich and metallic, filled her nostrils. Through the haze of her wolf's fury, Selene heard Kael's voice, steady and commanding, "Stand down. All of you." But it was too late. Her claws had already connected with the Alpha's chest as he moved to separate her from his warriors. His blood, different, potent, charged with Alpha power, coated her fingers. The moment it touched her skin, something inside Selene shattered. Her wolf, already in control, howled in triumph even as her human side screamed in horror. Her body convulsed, caught between forms, between instincts. Alpha blood, mate's blood, on her claws. The ultimate taboo. The shift reversed, violently, unwillingly. Human bones were formed too quickly, organs rearranged with brutal efficiency. Selene collapsed to the floor, her screams fading to whimpers as darkness closed in around her. The last thing she saw before consciousness fled was Kael's face, lined with concern, with determination, and with recognition. "Mate," he whispered, the word both a promise and a sentence. And then nothing but darkness. Her bones felt like glass, fragile, splintered, ready to shatter with the slightest movement. Selene drifted in and out of consciousness, each awakening more disorienting than the last. Unfamiliar scents surrounded her, cedar, clove, and something else, something distinctly alpha. Not just any alpha. Him. The realization shot through her like lightning, jolting her fully awake. Selene's eyes flew open as she tried to bolt upright, only to collapse back with a strangled cry as pain lanced through her body. "Easy," a voice murmured from somewhere to her left. "The bond rejection almost killed you." Bond rejection. The words echoed in her mind, confirming her worst fears. Fighting the mate bond had consequences, consequences her rogue upbringing had never prepared her for. With effort, Selene turned her head toward the voice. An elderly woman sat beside the bed, her silver hair pulled into a neat braid, her eyes sharp despite the wrinkles surrounding them. No warrior, but something in her posture spoke of authority. "Where am I?" Selene rasped, her throat raw as if she'd been screaming for days. Perhaps she had. "Moonfang territory," the woman replied, reaching for a cup of water. "The Alpha's private quarters, to be precise." As if pulled by invisible threads, Selene's attention shifted around the room. The space was larger than any she'd seen, walls of polish wood hung with tapestries depicting wolf packs beneath full moons. A massive hearth dominated one wall, the fire within crackling merrily, casting dancing shadows across the fur rugs covering the floor. Not a cell. Not chains. But a prison nonetheless. "I want to leave," Selene said, the words coming out less forceful than intended, her body too weak to match her will. The old woman smiled slightly. "You would not survive the journey in your condition. The bond between you and Alpha Kael has begun whether you wished it or not. Fighting it has consequences." Between one breath and the next, the door opened. Kael stood in the entrance, his broad shoulders nearly touching the frame on either side. Their eyes locked, and the air between them seemed to vibrate with unseen energy. "Freya," he addressed the old woman without breaking Selene's gaze. "How is she?" "Stubborn," Freya replied, rising from her chair. "Like another wolf I know." With a small bow, she slipped past him and out the door, leaving them alone. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Selene's wolf, which had been subdued by her weakness, now stirred, pushing against her consciousness, not fighting for control, but seeking closeness with the Alpha. Kael moved into the room with deliberate slowness, as if approaching a wounded animal. In a way, Selene supposed that's exactly what she was. "You've been unconscious for 3 days, he said finally, stopping at the foot of the bed. "Your shift reversed violently. Freya says it's because you've been suppressing your wolf too long." Selene's lips curled. My wolf is not your concern. It became my concern when she recognized me as her mate. His voice remained even, controlled, yet underlying it ran a current of something deeper, frustration, perhaps, or determination. Despite her weakness, Selene forced herself to sit up, ignoring the way her vision swam. I never asked for this. Neither did I. A flash of vulnerability crossed his face, so brief she might have imagined it. But here we are. Here we are. 3 simple words that somehow acknowledged the enormity of their situation. The tension broke slightly, replaced by something almost like resignation. Without warning, Kael approached her bedside and sat on the edge, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Her wolf surged forward again, yearning visible in every line of her being. I won't force this, he said quietly. I won't claim you against your will. The statement so contradicted everything she'd been taught about alphas that Selene could only stare at him, searching his face for deceit. She found none. Then let me go. His expression hardened. I can't do that either. The bond is already affecting you physically. Without proper completion, it will continue to weaken you until... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. As the silence roared between them, Selene took the opportunity to truly study him. In the soft glow of firelight, she could see the dark circles beneath his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He hadn't been sleeping well either. The bond didn't just affect her. It affected them both. Why did you bring me here? She asked finally. Why not just leave me to die in that cabin? Something inside her shifted at the shadow that passed over his face, not quite remorse, but something akin to it. Because no matter what you think of alphas, of packs, I don't abandon wolves in need. His voice trembled slightly. And I don't leave mates to die alone. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning she wasn't ready to accept. To cover her confusion, Selene glanced around the room again. So I'm to be kept in your quarters? Like a pet? Kael's eyes flashed silver, the first crack in his careful control. You're not a prisoner. Once you're healed, you'll have freedom within pack territory. Freedom within a cage is still a cage, she countered. His chest ached with a strange mixture of frustration and admiration. Even wounded, even at a clear disadvantage, she refused to submit. Her strength called to something primal in him, something beyond the bond. Rest, he said finally, standing. We'll talk more when you're stronger. As he reached the door, Selene called after him. Why do you care whether I live or die? You don't know me. Kael paused, his hand on the doorframe. Without turning, he replied, My brother once told me that we're defined by how we treat those who cannot repay us. His voice softened. He died saving pups from a rogue raid 7 years ago. The door closed behind him, leaving Selene alone with those words echoing in her mind. Weeks passed in a pattern of slow healing and careful navigation. True to his word, Kael gave her space, visiting only briefly each day to check on her progress. As her strength returned, Freya, who Selene learned was the pack's healer and an Omega, began showing her around the pack grounds. Moonfang territory sprawled across a valley nestled between protective mountain ranges, the pack compound built from stone and timber in a circle around a central clearing. Warriors trained in designated areas, pups played under the watchful eyes of designated caretakers, hunters came and went with fresh game. All of it functioning with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Nothing like the chaos and uncertainty of rogue life. With every passing day, Selene felt both more at home and more out of place. Her wolf delighted in the proximity to other wolves, in the richness of pack life, in the nearness of their mate. Her human side remained wary, watching for signs of the cruelty and dominance she'd been taught to expect. Instead, she witnessed Kael settling disputes with quiet authority, playing with pups who showed no fear of him, training young warriors with strict but fair guidance. Nothing like the power-hungry alphas of her nightmares. One evening, returning from the forest where she'd sought solitude, Selene found Kael waiting for her at the edge of the clearing. Moonlight silvered his dark hair, casting his features in sharp relief. Time stood still as their eyes met across the distance. Without conscious thought, Selene moved toward him, her steps measured but unflinching. Her wolf hummed with satisfaction at their closeness. "Walk with me?" he asked, the question genuine, offering choice rather than command. Under the weight of his stare, Selene nodded, falling into step beside him. They walked in companionable silence until they reached a promontory overlooking the valley, the pack compound glittering with firelight below. "Why do you hate packs so much?" Kael asked suddenly, his voice gentle despite the directness of the question. Selene's breath caught. No one had ever asked so directly. No one had ever wanted to know. "Because a pack destroyed mine," she said simply. The words fell from her lips before she could consider the wisdom of revealing such vulnerability. "I was 12. They came at night. No warning, no mercy." Kael's face remained impassive, but she felt his tension in the bond between them. "Rogues?" A bitter laugh escaped her. "That's what they want everyone to believe. That rogues are mindless killers, that packs are safe, that alphas protect." Her hands clenched into fists. "It was a neighboring pack. I saw their marks, smelled their scents while I hid, listening to my family die." In the echo of her voice, something cracked between them, her words hanging in the night air like shards of glass. "Not all packs," Kael began. "Save it," Selene interrupted. "I've heard the propaganda." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. The Moonfang Pack she'd observed these past weeks contradicted everything she believed. The way they treated their omegas with respect, the way the warriors protected rather than terrorized, the way Kael led with authority but without cruelty. As the sky darkened, Kael took a step closer. "I'm sorry for what happened to your family," he said, the simple words carrying the weight of genuine empathy. No pup should witness such things. In the stillness that followed, Selene realized with startling clarity that she believed him. Her world tilted on its axis, certainties she'd clung to for survival suddenly questionable. Her wolf stirred, pressing forward with a single desire, to be closer to him. For once, she didn't fight it. "The night we met," she asked, changing the subject abruptly, "why were you alone in the forest?" "Alphas usually travel with guards." A smile ghosted across his lips. "Sometimes I need space to think. To be just Kael, not Alpha Kael." The answer surprised her with its honesty, its vulnerability. "And what does just Kael think about lately?" His eyes found hers, intensity burning in their silver depths. "You." The air thickened between them, charged with possibility. One step would close the distance. One move would change everything. Before either could speak, a commotion from the compound below shattered the moment. A warrior ran toward them, urgency in every line of his body. "Alpha," he called. "Challenge at the training grounds. Damon has challenged the rogue female's right to be here." Selene's wolf surged forward, bristling at the threat. Kael's expression hardened, the vulnerable man of moments ago replaced by the Alpha of Moonfang. Go, Selene said, surprised by the calm in her own voice. Your pack needs you. Their eyes met one final time, something unspoken passing between them, before he turned and ran toward the compound, the warrior at his heels. As her name left his lips in a whisper of concern, Selene knew with sudden clarity that she would follow. Not because she belonged to this pack, but because for the first time in years, she wanted to belong somewhere. The question was whether they would accept her once they knew her truth. Blood has a language all its own, each drop a word, each splatter a sentence. And right now, the crimson pooling on the packed earth of the training ground spoke volumes about power, about territory, about who truly belonged. It wasn't Selene's blood. Not yet. She stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, heart hammering against her ribs as Kael faced the challenger, a broad-shouldered warrior with a jagged scar cutting across his cheek. Damon. The name rippled through the pack, carried on whispers tinged with excitement and apprehension. The rogue female has no place among us, Damon snarled, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent clearing. She threatens our security, our way of life. I challenge her right to remain. Selene moved forward without thinking, pushing through the wall of bodies until she stood in the open space. Her wolf surged beneath her skin, claws itching to extend, fangs pressing against her gums. I can speak for myself, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. All eyes turned to her, some curious, some hostile, all assessing. Kael's expression darkened as he took a step toward her. This isn't. This is exactly my fight, Selene interrupted, meeting his gaze without flinching. Something passed between them through the bond, concern from him, determination from her. Damon laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. The little rogue wants to play pack politics? Fine. He turned to address the gathered wolves. Our alpha brings a feral female into our midst, claims she's his mate, and expects us to welcome her with open arms. I say prove her worth, or send her back to the wilderness where she belongs. The tension broke as whispers erupted around them. Selene could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on her, the skepticism, the fear. These wolves didn't know her, knew only stories of rogues that painted them as savage, uncivilized, dangerous. Maybe they weren't entirely wrong. Kael's voice cut through the murmurs, deep and commanding. Pack law is clear. No wolf may challenge my chosen mate. She isn't claimed, Damon countered swiftly. The bond isn't complete. Until then, she's just an outsider enjoying your protection. A muscle ticked in Kael's jaw, his control visibly straining. But before he could respond, Selene stepped forward. I accept your challenge, she said, the words falling into sudden silence. Kael's eyes flashed to hers, alarm evident in their silver depths. Selene. I don't need your protection, she told him quietly, though in the stillness, everyone heard. I survived 7 years without an alpha. I can handle one arrogant warrior. The crowd shifted restlessly as Damon grinned, all teeth in anticipation. Training grounds. 1 hour. No weapons, no interference. First blood or submission. As he stalked away, the crowd dispersed, excited conversations breaking out as bets were placed and sides chosen. Selene remained still, aware of Kael's burning gaze fixed on her profile. You don't understand pack challenges, he said finally, voice tight with controlled anger. He's one of my best warriors. Trained since childhood. You're still recovering from the bond rejection. Selene turned to face him fully. You don't understand rogue survival. Every day is a challenge. Every hunt a risk. I'm still standing because I learned to fight bigger, stronger opponents and win. His expression shifted, frustration giving way to something like reluctant admiration. Why accept it all? I could have overruled him. And then what? She countered. I'd be the weak female hiding behind her alpha's protection. They'd never respect me. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Respect mattered to her. This pack mattered to her, more than she'd been willing to admit. Kael's voice softened. I don't want you hurt. The concern in his tone sent an unexpected warmth spreading through her chest. No one had worried about her well-being in a very long time. Then trust me to handle myself, she replied. After a moment, he nodded once, sharply. 1 hour. I'll be there. As she turned to leave, his fingers caught her wrist, the contact sending electricity racing up her arm. Selene. Her name on his lips sounded like both warning and promise. He'll target your left side. You favor it when you're tired. Surprised that he'd noticed such a detail, she could only nod before pulling away, the phantom warmth of his touch lingering on her skin. What followed was a flurry of preparation. Freya appeared at her quarters, arms laden with herbs and tinctures. For strength, she explained, mixing a bitter-smelling paste. And for after. You think I'll need healing after? Selene asked wryly. Freya's aged eyes sparkled with surprising mischief. Not if you listen to my advice. Damon fights with his heart, not his head. He'll come at you straight on, all power, no finesse. Selene blinked, taken aback by the tactical assessment from the elderly healer. You've watched him fight. I've patched up everyone he's fought, Freya corrected. I know his patterns better than he does. Her gnarled fingers pressed the paste to Selene's temples, the scent sharp and clarifying. Now listen carefully. By the time Selene approached the training grounds, her mind was clear and focused. The crowd had swelled, it seemed every member of Moonfang Pack had come to witness the challenge. She spotted Kael immediately, standing apart from the others, his face an impassive mask. Damon awaited her in the center of the ring, already stripped to the waist, muscled torso marked with old battle scars. He smirked as she entered, confidence radiating from every line of his body. Last chance to submit, rogue, he called, loud enough for everyone to hear. Save yourself the humiliation. Selene didn't respond, simply removing her outer tunic to stand in her fitted training clothes. A murmur ran through the crowd at the sight of her scarred arms, evidence of a life harder than most pack wolves could imagine. Her eyes found Kael's across the distance. No words passed between them, only a current of understanding. She would fight her own battles, but he would be there if she fell. The moment her wolf stirred beneath her skin, Selene knew what to do. Rather than suppressing it as she had for years, she opened herself to its strength, its instincts, letting it rise to just beneath the surface, not shifting, but not entirely human either. When the signal came, Damon charged just as Freya had predicted, all raw power and direct aggression. Selene sidestepped with preternatural speed, letting his momentum carry him past her. The crowd gasped at her quickness. Stand and fight, Damon growled, whirling to face her. I am fighting, she replied calmly. You're just not seeing it. Rage flashed across his features, exactly as Freya had said it would. His next attack came faster, more controlled, but still predictable. Selene evaded again, this time allowing her claws to extend just enough to score a shallow cut along his arm as he passed. First blood. She could end it now by pack law. But she didn't. Because the truth unraveled in that moment, this wasn't just about her right to stay. This was about proving she belonged, that she was worthy of standing beside an alpha. Not just any alpha. Kael. So instead of claiming victory, she continued, letting Damon's frustration build with each failed attack, each near miss. The crowd watched in growing appreciation as she turned his strength against him, using his own momentum to unbalance him. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, Damon stood heaving for breath, sweat-soaked and bleeding from a dozen minor cuts while Selene remained largely untouched. "Enough playing," he snarled, eyes flashing with humiliation. "Fight like a real wolf." "You asked for proof of my worth," Selene replied, circling him with fluid grace. "I'm giving it. I could have ended this with first blood. I chose not to." His expression contorted with fury. "You think this makes you one of us? You'll always be what you are, a savage with no pack, no family, no legacy." The words stung more than they should have, touching the raw wound of her past. "You know nothing about me." "I know enough," he spat. "I know rogues killed my brother 7 years ago. Slaughtered him like animals when he tried to save pups from their raids." The air between them shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just a challenge, it was personal. "Then maybe you should ask your alpha who really led those raids," Selene replied, the words escaping before she could stop them, pulled from some instinct deeper than thought. Confusion flickered across Damon's face. "What are you talking about?" Before she could respond, movement from the edge of the ring caught her attention. A newcomer had arrived, an older wolf with milky eyes and a face lined with hardship. He stood apart from the pack, yet commanded attention simply by his presence. Even in her wolf-heightened state, what happened next unfolded too quickly for Selene to process. The old wolf stepped forward, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent clearing. "Tell her the truth, who really left her pack to die." Kael froze, his body going rigid. Then chaos erupted. Warriors moved to intercept the stranger, but Kael stopped them with a raised hand. His face had drained of color, his eyes locked not on the old wolf but on Selene. "Who is he?" she demanded, abandoning the challenge to stalk toward Kael. "Riker," Kael answered, his voice tight. "A rogue we captured near the border 3 days ago." Damon's confusion had turned to suspicion. "What truth, Alpha? What is he talking about?" The air thickened with tension, with secrets on the verge of spilling. Selene could feel the bond between her and Kael pulsing with something dark and painful. "Kael," she said, his name a question, a demand, a plea. His jaw worked as if he was physically restraining words from escaping. Finally, he addressed the gathered pack. "This challenge is over. Return to your duties." No one moved. "Now," he commanded, his alpha voice rolling through the clearing with undeniable authority. Reluctantly, the pack dispersed, though many lingered at the edges, watching. Damon stood his ground, tension vibrating through his body. "You owe us an explanation," he insisted. Later, Kael responded, his tone brooking no argument. "For now, secure Riker in my quarters." As warriors led the old rogue away, his milky eyes remained fixed on Selene, a knowing smile playing at his lips. Something about him struck a chord in her memory, something she couldn't quite place. When only she, Kael, and Damon remained, Selene stepped forward. "What truth, Kael?" His eyes met hers, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw fear there. Not physical fear, Kael was too strong, too confident for that, but the terror of a secret long buried suddenly threatening to surface. "Not here," he said quietly. "Yes, here," she insisted. What did he mean about my pack? About who left them to die? Damon's gaze flicked between them, comprehension dawning. Your pack was killed? When? 7 years ago, Selene replied without looking away from Kael's face. The same time your brother supposedly died saving pups from rogues. The words hung in the air like a physical thing, sharp-edged and dangerous. Kael's expression closed, becoming the impenetrable mask of an alpha rather than the man she'd glimpsed beneath. Damon, leave us, he ordered. But Alpha. Now. With visible reluctance, Damon backed away, though his eyes promised this wasn't over. Once alone, Selene stepped closer to Kael, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, to scent the turmoil beneath his controlled exterior. Tell me. Not everything is as simple as you believe, he began, each word careful, measured. The stories we tell, about rogues, about packs, about heroes and villains, they're never the whole truth. Her wolf pressed forward, sensing deception. Stop talking in circles. What does Riker know about my pack? Kael's hand rose as if to touch her face, then dropped. Come with me. There's something I need to show you. The path he led her on wound away from the compound, up into the forested hills beyond. Neither spoke as they walked, the silence between them charged with unasked questions, with truths hovering just beyond reach. Eventually, they reached a small clearing dominated by a stone monument. Names were carved into its surface, dozens of them, beneath the inscription, fallen in service to Moonfang. Kael stopped before it, his fingers tracing one name near the top. My brother, Varen. His voice carried a weight of grief still fresh despite the years. He was being groomed for Alpha when he died. Everyone believed he would be the greatest leader Moonfang had ever known. Selene stood silently, waiting. 7 years ago, he led a mission to investigate reports of rogue activity near our eastern border. We'd received information about children being held captive. His voice grew strained. He returned mortally wounded, with 3 rescued pups. His last words were about rogues attacking when they tried to free the children. He died a hero. Her heart pounded as she sensed the turn coming. And the truth? Kael's eyes closed briefly, pain etched in every line of his face. After I became Alpha, I found inconsistencies in the reports. Patrols that went unrecorded. Territory incursions without explanation. And rumors, whispers about Omega children disappearing from smaller packs. Between them, something cracked, a fissure in the foundation of trust they'd been building. When I investigated further, I discovered. He paused, visibly struggling. The raid on your pack wasn't random. It wasn't rogues. It was orchestrated by a coalition of corrupt alphas who had discovered a small pack investigating their trafficking network. Omegas, especially children, were being sold across territories for their rare healing abilities. Selene's body went cold. And your brother? Kael's next words emerged barely above a whisper. The reports were signed by Varen. He led the raid personally. The world tilted beneath Selene's feet, everything she thought she knew rearranging into a terrible new pattern. Your brother, she said, each word sharp as broken glass, killed my family. Yes. The simple admission hung between them, devastating in its finality. You knew. Not a question, a realization. All this time, you knew where I came from, what happened to my pack. Not at first, Kael insisted, reaching for her. Not until you told me your story on the promontory. Then I recognized the timing, the location. I should have told you then, But you chose to protect his memory instead. She stepped back from his outstretched hand, disgust and betrayal washing through her. You let me believe rogues killed my family while your brother was painted as some kind of savior. Her wolf howled inside her, not with rage but with pain so acute it felt physical. The mate bond between them wavered, stretched thin by the weight of this revelation. I shut down the network when I became Alpha, Kael said, desperation edging into his voice. I ended what he started, but I couldn't destroy his memory. The pack needed a hero to believe in after losing so much. A bitter laugh escaped her. And I needed a family that wasn't murdered by the brother of my supposed mate. The words struck him visibly, like physical blows. His shoulders slumped, the powerful Alpha suddenly looking lost. Selene, please. Don't. She backed away further, each step widening the gulf between them. Don't touch me. Don't follow me. The bond, he began. I don't care if it kills me, she snarled, feeling her control slipping, her wolf surging forward with grief and rage. It would be better than this. As her wolf pressed forward, screaming in spiritual agony as the bond fractured, Selene felt her body begin to shift. Unlike the controlled transitions she'd mastered over years of solitude, this came violently, painfully, driven by emotion rather than will. Bones cracked and reformed. Skin stretched and sprouted fur. Human consciousness receded as her wolf took control, driven by the primitive need to escape, to run, to howl its anguish to the uncaring moon. The last thing she saw as her humanity slipped away was Kael's face, devastation etched into every line, his hand outstretched toward her in silent plea. Then her wolf was running, tearing through the forest, leaving behind Pack and Alpha and Bond. Leaving behind the second family that had betrayed her. That night, as stars scattered across the endless sky, a single set of claw marks appeared on the Alpha's door, deep, deliberate gouges that spoke louder than words. Selene was gone. The wolf's paws had bled for 3 days straight before the wounds finally closed. 3 days of running without rest, of pushing beyond exhaustion, of putting as much distance as possible between herself and the Moonfang territory. Between herself and him. Now, on the 14th day of her self-imposed exile, Selene sat huddled in the hollow of an ancient oak, her human form wrapped in a deerskin she'd hunted and cured herself. The bond sickness had settled deep in her bones, a constant ache that grew worse with each passing night. Some mornings, she couldn't rise from her makeshift bed. Some nights, fever consumed her, sending her into hallucinations where Kael's voice called to her across vast distances. Some days, the only thing keeping her alive was pure, stubborn spite. She would not die from bond rejection. She would not give the universe the satisfaction. Between one breath and the next, a scent carried on the wind caught her attention. Wolf. Not pack, but not entirely rogue either. Familiar, yet not. Selene tensed, hand reaching for the crude stone knife she'd fashioned. Her weakened state made shifting risky. The last time she'd tried, she'd remained trapped between forms for hours, body too exhausted to complete the transformation. I know you're there, she called out, voice raspy from disuse. Show yourself. The bushes 30 feet away parted to reveal an elderly man with clouded eyes. Riker. The rogue from Moonfang whose words had shattered her world. How did you find me? Selene demanded, knife still held ready. Riker's weathered face creased in a smile. Your mother had the same scent. Wild honey and storm clouds. The knife wavered. You knew my mother? I knew all of Silver Creek Pack. He moved carefully into the clearing, making no sudden movements. His body was stooped with age, but something in his posture suggested he had once been powerful. I was their emissary to the Northern Territories before the massacre. Selene's heart hammered painfully against her ribs. For 7 years, she believed herself the sole survivor of Silver Creek. Why didn't you find me before? Because I thought you were dead, little silver wolf. Riker settled onto a fallen log, movements stiff with age. Just like they wanted everyone to believe. The old title, Little Silver Wolf, hit her like a physical blow. Only her father had ever called her that, for the unusual silvery tips of her fur. Why now? She asked, lowering the knife but not her guard. Why reveal yourself at Moonfang? Riker's milky eyes somehow found hers despite his blindness. Because I saw what was happening between you and Kael. History repeating itself. Another Blackwood lying to another Silver Creek wolf. Blackwood? The Alpha's family name. Before Moonfang, they were the Blackwood Pack. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper though no one else was around. And your mother was Varen Blackwood's mate before she escaped and found sanctuary with Silver Creek. The world tilted beneath Selene. That's impossible. Is it? Riker countered. Have you never wondered why your wolf is so strong? Why you could survive alone when most rogues join new packs or die? You carry alpha blood, girl. Your mother fled Varen when she discovered his involvement in trafficking omegas. When he found her 7 years later, settled with a new mate and a half-grown daughter, his rage knew no bounds. Selene's mind spun with implications. My mother never told me. She was protecting you. From Varen, from the truth of your heritage, from the legacy of violence that follows alpha bloodlines. Riker's voice softened. But she couldn't protect you from fate, it seems. Drawing you back to another Blackwood Alpha. Her chest ached with fresh betrayal. Not just from Kael, but from her mother, from the universe that seemed determined to tangle her life with the very pack that had destroyed it. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Because you have a choice to make. Riker stood with surprising grace for one so aged. Continue running until the bond kills you. Or return and make them answer for their crimes. Without warning, a howl pierced the twilight, distant but unmistakable. Alpha. Searching. Finding. Kael. Her wolf surged forward at the sound, nearly forcing a shift despite her weakness. The bond, damaged but not broken, pulsed with renewed strength. He's tracking you, Riker said unnecessarily. The bond is stronger than distance. He will find you eventually. Fury coiled in Selene's gut, hot and dangerous. Let him come. Let him see what Bond's sickness has done. Let him witness what his brother's legacy created. Riker's expression turned calculating. Or you could use what he feels for you. The Blackwood's greatest weakness has always been their mates. Something cold and hard crystallized in Selene's chest. You want me to kill him. I want justice for Silver Creek, Riker corrected. How you achieve it is your choice. The howl came again, closer this time. Her body responded instinctively, a shiver running through her despite her anger. There are others, Riker continued, urgency threading his voice. Survivors of smaller packs destroyed to hide the trafficking network. Wolves who've lost everything to alphas like Varen. They've been waiting for someone to lead them. I'm no leader, Selene protested. But you are, Riker insisted. You carry alpha blood. You've survived what would kill most wolves. And you have something no other rogue has, intimate knowledge of Moonfang Pack and its alpha. Before she could respond, Riker melted back into the forest, his parting words floating on the breeze. Find us at the northern ridge when you're ready to make your choice. Alone again, Selene curled tighter into herself as Kael's howl echoed through the night. With each call, her wolf whined pitifully, begging to answer, to return, to submit to the bond. But her human side remembered. Remembered the lies. Remembered her family's blood soaking into the earth of Silver Creek. Remembered Kael's face as he admitted his brother's crimes while still protecting his memory. As the sky darkened, Selene made her choice. 3 nights later, Kael stood alone in his quarters, staring unseeingly at the papers spread across his desk. Maps, reports, sighting records, a desperate attempt to track Selene's movements. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his face gaunt from sleeplessness and worry. The bond was killing him slowly. Each day without her, the pain intensified. His wolf grew increasingly aggressive, harder to control. During council meetings, he found himself drifting, losing focus, drawn by phantom sensations of her presence at the edges of his awareness. A knock at his door barely registered. Enter, he called, not looking up from the maps. Torin, his beta, stepped inside, concern etched on his weathered face. The Northern Patrol reports rogue activity at the ridge. A gathering. At least 20 wolves. That caught Kael's attention. Armed? Positioned strategically. Appears they're waiting for something. Torin hesitated. Or someone. The implication hung in the air between them. Selene. Prepare a unit, Kael ordered, already reaching for his weapons. We leave at dawn. Alpha. Torin stepped forward, voice lowered. The council is concerned. Since the rogue female left, your judgment has been questioned. Kael's eyes flashed dangerously. By whom? By those who remember what happened the last time a Blackwood was distracted by a mate. Torin held his ground, one of the few wolves brave enough to speak plainly to his alpha. Your brother. My brother is dead, Kael interrupted harshly. And his legacy with him. Torin's expression remained troubled. Is it? The rogues at the ridge. The old wolf's escape. The female's disappearance after learning about Varen's involvement in Silver Creek. It all connects. Deep down, Kael had reached the same conclusion. The timing was too perfect, the pieces aligning too neatly. Riker's appearance, his cryptic message, Selene's discovery of the truth, it felt orchestrated, a trap years in the making. And he was walking straight into it. I don't have a choice, Kael said quietly, the admission costing him. The bond could be severed, Torin finished. There are ways. Rituals. Painful, yes, but survivable. The mere suggestion sent a wave of physical agony through Kael so intense he had to grip the desk to remain standing. His wolf snarled in rejection of the very idea. No, he managed finally. That's not an option. Torin's shoulders slumped in resignation. Then we prepare for war. Dawn painted the sky in bloody streaks when Kael and his warriors crested the final hill to the northern ridge. What awaited them was not the chaotic rogue camp they'd expected, but an organized force, wolves positioned with tactical precision in defensive formations. And at their center, standing tall despite her obvious physical deterioration, was Selene. The sight of her hit Kael like a physical blow. Even gaunt from bond sickness, even with hatred burning in her eyes, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. His wolf surged forward, desperate to close the distance, to repair what was broken. But the dozen armed rogues flanking her made that impossible. "Alpha Kael," she called, her voice carrying across the clearing. Despite everything, hearing his name on her lips sent a shiver of pleasure through him. "You're looking unwell." Behind him, his warriors shifted restlessly, sensing their alpha's inner turmoil. "Selene," he responded, fighting to keep his voice steady. "You've been busy." A bitter smile curved her lips. "Finding my own kind. Wolves without packs. Survivors." "Survivors of what?" "Of your brother's legacy." She gestured to those surrounding her. All of them lost family to the trafficking network Varen helped create. All of them dismissed as rogues, as savages, when they dared seek justice. Murmurs broke out among his warriors. The trafficking network had been a closely guarded secret, known only to the council. Now Selene was exposing it openly, forcing confrontation. "What do you want?" Kael asked, though he already suspected the answer. Selene stepped forward, and even across the distance, he could feel the bond between them pulse with renewed strength. "Will you keep covering blood with silence? Or will you fight with me to end this legacy of lies?" The question hung in the air, fraught with meaning. Not just about the network, about Varen, about the past, but about them. About trust shattered and potentially rebuilt. Without breaking eye contact with Selene, Kael shrugged off his ceremonial alpha cloak. Next, he unbuckled the sword belt that had once belonged to Varen, letting it fall to the ground with a dull thud. Gasps rose from both sides of the clearing. The sword was more than a weapon, it was a symbol of Blackwood leadership, passed from alpha to alpha for generations. By dropping it, Kael wasn't just disarming. He was breaking with tradition, with his brother's memory, with the legacy that had defined him. In the stillness that followed, Kael crossed the invisible boundary separating Pack from Rogue, walking alone and unarmed toward Selene. Torin's voice broke the silence. "Alpha, what are you doing?" Kael didn't turn, his eyes fixed on Selene as he approached. Her expression revealed nothing, but through the bond, he felt her surprise, her wariness, her pain. "Choosing," he answered simply. When he stood before her, close enough to touch yet separated by a gulf of betrayal and hurt, Kael did what no alpha in recorded history had done before. He knelt. One knee to the ground, head bowed, neck exposed. The ultimate gesture of submission from an alpha wolf. Collective shock rippled through both groups. Warriors shifted uncomfortably, rogues whispered among themselves. But Kael remained still, vulnerable, waiting. "What is this?" Selene demanded, voice tight with emotion. "Some new manipulation?" "The truth," Kael replied, still kneeling. "No more silence. No more lies. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I should have chosen you over his memory." His voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears. "I'm choosing now. Whatever you decide, justice, vengeance, exile, I accept it. But know that without you, the bond will eventually kill me. And I would rather die having finally done what's right than live with more lies." Something flickered in her eyes, a softening, a recognition of the enormous step he'd taken. But before she could respond, shouts erupted from the tree line. "Traitor!" Damon burst from the ranks of Moonfang warriors, face contorted with rage, charging directly toward Kael's exposed back. Blackwood blood for Blackwood honor. Time slowed. Kael, still kneeling, turned too late. Damon's claws extended, aiming for the vulnerable throat of his alpha. And Selene moved. Without thought, Without hesitation, she threw herself between them, her weakened body responding to instinct deeper than anger, than hurt, than betrayal. Protect mate. Damon's attack caught her across the chest instead, claws digging deep, tearing through flesh. Blood sprayed across the ground as Selene collapsed into Kael's arms. Chaos erupted. Rogues and warriors clashed, years of hostility igniting into violence. Somewhere in the melee, Damon disappeared, fleeing into the forest. But Kael noticed none of it. His world had narrowed to Selene's body growing heavier in his arms, to the blood soaking through her clothes, to her eyes growing dimmer with each labored breath. "Why?" he whispered, cradling her against his chest. "Why would you protect me after everything?" A faint smile touched her lips. "Stupid wolf," she murmured, voice weakening. "Bond goes both ways." Around them, the fighting intensified. A warrior fell to rogue claws. A rogue howled in pain. The conflict they both feared, both tried to prevent in their own ways, unfolding exactly as predicted. Selene's eyes fluttered closed, her breathing growing shallow. The bond between them stretched painfully thin, threatening to snap completely. In that moment, Kael made his final choice. With a roar that silenced the battlefield, he gathered Selene closer. "Enough!" All eyes turned to the Alpha cradling his fallen mate, his face transformed by grief and determination. "The fighting ends now," he commanded, voice carrying the full weight of his authority. "Moonfang stands down. The rogues are under my protection. Anyone who challenges this answers directly to me." Confusion rippled through the warriors, but none dared disobey the direct command. Slowly, they backed away from their opponents, though tension remained high. "Torin," Kael called, not looking away from Selene's pale face. "Tell the council what happened here. Tell them everything, about Varen, about the trafficking, about the lies we've perpetuated. It ends today." The beta nodded grimly, already organizing the retreat. As the clearing slowly emptied, Kael remained kneeling, Selene limp in his arms. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his fingers, her chest barely rising with each breath. The wound itself wasn't fatal, not for a werewolf who should heal quickly. But combined with weeks of bond sickness, her body had nothing left to fight with. She was dying. And with her, the last chance for redemption. For both of them. Riker approached slowly, his milky eyes somehow finding Kael's with unerring accuracy. "There is one way," the old wolf said quietly. "Complete the bond." "She rejected it," Kael replied, voice hollow. "She rejected me." "Not the bond," Riker corrected. "Never the bond. Only the lies surrounding it." Hope flickered, fragile and dangerous. "The completion ritual requires consent." "It requires surrender," Riker countered. "Hers to you, or yours to her. Either will work." Understanding dawned slowly. An Alpha could complete a bond by claiming his mate, or by surrendering completely to her. The latter was unheard of, forbidden in pack law, considered an abomination against the natural order. An Alpha submitting entirely, offering his power, his strength, his very essence to his mate without reservation. Without warning, Selene's body convulsed, a strangled gasp escaping her lips as blood bubbled at the corners of her mouth. The bond between them thinned further, stretched to near breaking. "Choose quickly, Alpha," Riker urged. "She has minutes, not hours." Kael looked down at Selene's face, at the woman who had challenged everything he thought he knew. Who had suffered because of his family's sins. Who had somehow, despite it all, moved to protect him when it mattered most. His choice was already made. Gathering her closer, he whispered against her ear, words older than pack law, a ritual rarely spoken and never by an alpha to his mate. I surrender my strength to your weakness. My power to your need. My life to your death. By blood and bone, by moon and earth, I am yours before you are mine. Take what is freely given. Then, with sacred reverence, he bit down on his own wrist, drawing blood, and pressed the wound to Selene's lips. The moment his blood touched her tongue, the bond between them flared to blinding intensity. Pain unlike anything he'd ever experienced tore through Kael's body as his alpha essence, the power passed down through generations of Blackwood leaders, flowed from him into Selene. His vision darkened. His strength ebbed. His wolf howled in both agony and ecstasy as the bond between them solidified, completed not through dominance but through sacrifice. Around them, the forest fell silent, as if nature itself held its breath to witness something both sacred and taboo. As consciousness began to slip away, Kael felt Selene stir in his arms. Her eyes opened, no longer dimmed by pain but bright with newfound power, with his power, freely given. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice stronger despite the blood still staining her clothes. With the last of his strength, Kael smiled. "Chosen you," he managed, before darkness claimed him completely. His final thought, as the world faded around him, was that if this was death, it was worth it. She would live. She would lead. And perhaps, in time, she would forgive. Death had a scent, sharp like winter frost, hollow like empty caves, inevitable like the waning moon. Selene knew this scent intimately. She'd smelled it on her family as she hid, trembling, in that hollow tree trunk 7 years ago. She'd carried it with her through years of solitude, worn it like armor to keep others away. Now, that same scent clung to Kael as he lay motionless on the pine needle bed of the healing den, his breathing so shallow it barely disturbed the air. 3 days had passed since the confrontation at the northern ridge. 3 days since Kael had surrendered his alpha power to save her life. 3 days of hovering in this terrible limbo between grief and hope. Selene hadn't left his side once. "This isn't what I wanted," she whispered, fingers tracing the sharp contours of his face, thinner now, cheekbones more pronounced. The ritual had taken more than his power, it had drained his very life force. "I wanted justice, not this." Behind her, Freya worked silently, grinding herbs into poultices, brewing teas that went untouched. The elderly healer had said little since they brought Kael's unconscious form back to Moonfang territory, but her eyes spoke volumes, worry, yes, but also something like wonder. What Kael had done was unprecedented. Forbidden. An alpha sacrificing their power to save a mate was whispered about in ancient stories, considered more myth than possibility. Yet he had done it without hesitation. "Why won't he wake?" Selene asked, not for the first time. Freya's hands stilled momentarily. "The balance seeks equilibrium," she replied cryptically. "What was given must find its place." Before Selene could demand a clearer answer, the healing den's entrance curtain parted. Torin entered, his face drawn with fatigue and concern. The beta had been managing pack affairs in Kael's absence, navigating the tumultuous aftermath of revelations and shifting alliances. "The council is assembled," he announced, eyes moving to Kael's still form before settling on Selene. "They're waiting for you." "I'm not leaving him," she replied immediately. "You must." Torin's voice was gentle but firm. "The pack needs direction. The rogues need reassurance. And you," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "you carry his power now. By our oldest laws, that makes you acting alpha until he wakes." The words hit her like a physical blow. Acting alpha. The very notion was absurd. She was a rogue, an outsider, the daughter of a pack destroyed by Moonfang's former leader. Yet the power humming beneath her skin was undeniable. Since the ritual, her senses had sharpened beyond anything she'd known before. Her wolf, once a separate entity to be controlled, now felt seamlessly integrated with her human consciousness. When she'd spoken to the warriors yesterday, they had responded instantly to her commands, their wolves recognizing the authority in her voice even if their human sides remained skeptical. "I never asked for this," she said quietly. "Neither did Kael, when his brother died," Torin countered. "Leadership rarely comes when we're ready for it." Selene's eyes returned to Kael's face, somehow younger in unconsciousness, the weight of alpha responsibilities temporarily lifted. What would he want her to do? The question came unbidden, surprising her with how much she cared about the answer. "I'll return as soon as the council meeting ends," she told Freya, who nodded without looking up from her work. As they walked through the compound, Selene felt the weight of eyes following their progress. Pack members paused in their tasks, conversations falling silent as she passed. Not with hostility, she realized, but with curiosity, with uncertainty. And something else, expectation. Inside the council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Elders and senior warriors sat around a circular stone table, their expressions ranging from outright hostility to guarded interest. At the far end of the table sat Riker, representing the rogues who had come with Selene, his milky eyes fixed unseeingly on the middle distance. "The Alpha's mate joins us," announced an elderly female council member, her tone carefully neutral. "Selene," she corrected, taking the empty chair at the head of the table, Kael's chair. "I have a name." The small assertion seemed to shift the energy in the room. Some sat straighter, reassessing her. Others frowned, uncomfortable with her directness. "Very well, Selene," the elder conceded. "We face unprecedented circumstances. An alpha incapacitated. Rogues within our territory. Accusations of past crimes that, if proven true, could destabilize pack alliances throughout the region." "They are true," Selene stated flatly. "And hiding them has already caused enough damage." Murmurs broke out around the table. A male elder with iron-gray hair slammed his palm against the stone. "You cannot come here and tear down everything we've built. Varen was a hero to this pack. If we expose his involvement in Omega trafficking, it will destroy Moonfang's standing. Other packs will never trust us again." "They shouldn't trust you," Selene replied, her voice level despite the anger simmering beneath. "You've been living a lie. Your hero slaughtered innocent wolves to protect a network that sold children." The council chamber fell silent, her words landing like physical blows. "What would you have us do?" asked a younger warrior, genuine concern in his voice. "Truth or not, revealing this could destroy us." Selene felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders, not just for herself, not just for Kael, but for all the wolves looking to her for direction. For the first time, she truly understood the burden Kael had carried alone. "The truth doesn't destroy," she said finally. "Secrets do. They fester and rot foundations from within." Her eyes moved around the table, meeting each gaze directly. "Moonfang will acknowledge what happened to Silver Creek Pack and the others. You will make reparations to the survivors. And together, we will dismantle what remains of the trafficking network." "And if we refuse?" challenged the iron-haired elder. Selene didn't raise her voice, didn't shift, didn't need to. The power Kael had given her radiated from her very being as she leaned forward. "This isn't a negotiation. What followed was hours of heated debate, of resistance gradually giving way to reluctant acceptance. By the time Selene rose from the table, a framework had been established: investigations into remaining trafficking operations, sanctuary for displaced rogues, and a truth-telling ceremony to honor the lost packs. As the council members filed out, Riker remained, his weathered face unreadable. "Was this your plan all along?" Selene asked him quietly. "To use me to force Moonfang to face its past?" A smile touched the old wolf's lips. "My plan was justice. The path to it evolved." He rose stiffly from his chair. "Your mother would be proud. She always believed the truth would surface eventually." "Did she know?" Selene asked, the question that had haunted her since learning of her heritage. "That I was Varen's daughter by blood?" "She suspected," Riker admitted. "It was why she was so determined you should grow up free, knowing how to survive outside pack structures. She feared his blood in you." The revelation settled like a stone in Selene's chest. All those years thinking herself purely Silver Creek, only to discover half her blood came from the very Alpha who had ordered her pack's destruction. "Does it change how you see yourself?" Riker asked perceptively. "Should it?" "We are more than our blood," the old wolf said. "More than our pasts. Your mother understood that. I think Kael does too." Kael. Even thinking his name sent a pulse through the bond between them, weaker than before but still present, still vital. "Go to him," Riker urged. "The pack matters, but so does he." Nightfall found Selene once again at Kael's bedside, the events of the day weighing heavily on her mind. Freya had retreated to her own quarters, leaving them alone for the first time since the ritual. In the quiet darkness, Selene allowed herself to truly look at him, not as an enemy, not as an alpha, but as the man who had chosen her over everything he'd been raised to protect. "You're an idiot," she told his unconscious form, voice rough with emotion. "Sacrificing yourself for someone who hated you." Her fingers found his, twining together without conscious thought. "I never asked you to die for me. I never wanted that power. I just wanted." She hesitated, searching for words that felt inadequate. "I wanted to be seen. To be heard. To know that my family's deaths mattered." The bond between them pulsed faintly, like a whispered response. "The council has agreed to everything. The truth about Varen. Reparations for the survivors. A place for rogues within Moonfang territory." A bitter laugh escaped her. "You could have done all that without nearly killing yourself. You just needed to choose." And he had chosen, in the end. Chosen her. Chosen truth over legacy, justice over comfort, sacrifice over power. Without warning, a tear slipped down her cheek, then another. 7 years of solitude, of holding grief and rage so tightly they became her only companions, and now, finally, the dam broke. Selene wept silently, still clutching Kael's hand, her tears falling onto their joined fingers. "I forgive you," she whispered between shuddering breaths. "Not because you were innocent. But because when it mattered, you chose differently than he did." Something shifted in the bond between them, a flicker, a strengthening. Beneath her fingers, Kael's pulse quickened slightly. Selene froze, scarcely daring to hope. His eyelids fluttered, then opened. Silver eyes, dulled by weakness but unmistakably aware, found hers in the dim light. "Selene," he murmured, voice barely audible. Her heart stuttered painfully in her chest. "You're awake." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're still here. 3 simple words that somehow acknowledged everything between them, her choice to stay when she could have left, her presence at his side despite their complicated past, her forgiveness that had called him back from the brink. The pack needed direction, she said, attempting to sound practical even as relief flooded through her. The pack, he repeated, eyes never leaving hers. Or you. The directness of the question caught her off guard. Before the ritual, before his sacrifice, she might have deflected, might have hidden behind anger and distress. Now, she found herself answering with equal honesty. Both. His fingers tightened weakly around hers. The power I gave you is still here, she confirmed. I can feel it. Concern flickered across his face. I never meant to burden you with it. I know. And she did know, with a certainty that surprised her. The bond between them, completed by his sacrifice, allowed her to sense his intentions with newfound clarity. Rest now. We'll figure out the rest later. But Kael struggled to sit up, determination overriding his weakness. There's something you should know first. His voice strengthened with each word, as if the very act of speaking to her was revitalizing him. What I did, the ritual, it wasn't just to save your life. Then why? She asked, helping him into a sitting position, acutely aware of his warmth beneath her hands. His eyes held hers, silver meeting amber in the dim light. Because I couldn't bear a world where you existed but hated me. Because I wanted you to have the power to choose freely, to stay or go, to lead or follow. Because he hesitated, vulnerability naked on his face. Because you what? She prompted, heart racing. Because I love you, he said simply. Not because of the bond, though that's part of it. But because of who you are. Fierce. Unbroken. Unwilling to settle for comfortable lies. The words hung in the air between them, both challenge and offering. Selene's wolf, usually so vocal about anything involving Kael, was strangely quiet, not pushing, not demanding, simply waiting for her human half to decide. I'm not made to be anyone's Luna, she said finally, watching his face carefully. Pain flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. I understand. No, you don't, she countered, surprising herself by moving closer rather than pulling away. I'm saying I can't be the Luna they expect, docile, diplomatic, decorative. If I stay, if I accept this, she gestured between them, indicating the bond, the power, the future hanging in the balance, it would be on my terms. Hope dawned slowly in his expression. And what terms would those be? Equality, she said immediately. True equality. Not just between us, but in how Moonfang treats all wolves, pack, rogue, alpha, omega. Kael's lips quirked into a genuine smile, the first she'd seen since he awoke. Is that all? No, Selene continued, finding confidence in his reaction. Transparency about the past. No more secrets, no more protecting legacies that don't deserve protection. Done, he agreed without hesitation. And time, she added, voice softening. Time to learn who we are together, without the pressure of pack expectations. Kael reached up, his hand surprisingly steady as it cupped her cheek. I can give you all of that and more. But I can't give you what you've already taken. She raised an eyebrow in question. My heart, he said simply. It's been yours since you first snarled at me in that clearing. Despite herself, Selene laughed, a sound so unexpected it startled them both. You have terrible taste in women. The best, he corrected, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Now, are you going to kiss me, or do I need to wait until I'm fully recovered? The challenge in his voice was so familiar, so essentially Kael, that Selene felt the last of her reservations melting away. Not because the bond demanded it, not because fate had thrown them together, but because she chose him. As their lips met, the bond between them flared to blinding brightness, no longer a chain binding unwilling partners but a bridge connecting two souls who had both, finally, decided to cross. Months later, beneath the light of a full moon, Selene stood at the edge of the clearing where ceremonies had been held since Moonfang's founding. Her silver-tipped fur caught the moonlight as she watched pack members and former rogues mingling, sharing stories, beginning to heal old wounds. Behind her, Kael approached silently, his presence familiar and welcome through their bond long before his scent reached her. "They're waiting for you," he said, coming to stand beside her. His strength had returned gradually, different now. He was still powerful, still respected, but the authority they shared had transformed them both. "For us," she corrected, reaching for his hand. Together, they stepped into the clearing where a bonfire blazed, illuminating faces both familiar and new. The truth-telling ceremony had brought forward survivors from 5 different packs, all destroyed to protect the trafficking network. Among them stood Riker, now an honored elder within the restructured Moonfang. As they took their places by the fire, Selene felt the weight of all eyes upon them, not with judgment or suspicion, but with something like hope. "I wasn't made to be anyone's Luna," she began, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "But he never asked me to change. He just stayed long enough for me to believe I was worth staying for." Kael's response, spoken clearly for all to hear, became the new oath of Moonfang Pack. "We protect what is true, not what is comfortable. We heal what was broken, even when it hurts. And we stay, especially when staying is the hardest choice." As the word settled into the hearts of those gathered, Selene realized that in seeking justice for her lost pack, she had found something she'd never thought possible, a future. Not defined by vengeance or survival, but by choice. By truth. By love. And for the first time since that night 7 years ago when she'd hidden in a hollow tree and listened to her world end, Selene felt truly, completely home.